Good morning, and thanks for joining us today on Leadership Log. Today, the topic of discussion is compensation and how does that happen within AFL-CMC. We're joined with a number of senior leaders who are well-versed in the ins and outs of ACDEMO, and we're going to meet them all right now. We'll start with Ms. Spangler.
Hi, good morning. My name is Liz Spangler, and I am an HR Chief for the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center Personnel Directorate, and I am functionally aligned to the Financial Management and Comptroller Directorate. I started my career with the Air Force in employee and labor relations in the Civilian Personnel Office in 2009, where I played a vital role in the implementation of ACDEMO for the 88th Air Base Wing back in 2016. I am, as the HR chief for FM, I oversee our pay pool and sub-pay pool administrators as they work with leadership to execute the ACDEMO pay pool process. And I am also a pay pool member for the DP pay pool, and I am very happy to be here today for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. McCarthy.
Hi, my name is Jen McCarthy. I am a human resources analyst at Hanscom Air Force Base, and I service the Financial Management Directorate. I am also a sub-pay pool manager for the Financial Management Directorate, as well as a member of the DP pay pool, and I've been involved in ACDEMO for about 4 years now.
Thank you. Ms. Carlson.
Hi, I'm Charlene Carlson. I'm the Organizational Senior Functional for Logistics in the ISR SOF Directorate. I have been a lead to sub-pay pool 4 in logistics. I have been doing this for about 3 or 4 years, and I'm glad to be part of this video. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pieri.
Good morning. I'm Jody Pieri. I'm Chief of the Resource Management Division within the FM Directorate here at Lifecycle Management Center. Prior to that, I was the Chief Financial Officer at the AFSAC Directorate. I've been involved in the ACDEMO process since it started here at LCMC. For the last 3 years, I've been a sub-pay pool member, and this year I'll be serving as a sub-pay pool lead. I'm happy to join the conversation this morning. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Leingang.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me, Daryl. Yeah, Greg Leingang. I'm currently the pay pool manager for the 88th Air Base Wing. And prior to this, since 2016, I guess when we started Acquisition Demo, I was a sub-pay pool lead in LCMC FM. So I did that for, I guess, about 4 years prior to being the pay pool manager now in the 88th Air Base Wing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Owens.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Owens. I'm currently the Civilian Personnel Officer at Hanscom Air Force Base. I've been through all the cycles of ACDEMO. Also at other installations, experienced ACDEMO a little bit. I am the facilitator for the 66th Air Base Group's pay pool, and I'm glad to be here this morning.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lyman.
Yeah, hi, this is Sean Lyman. I'm the Director of Logistics for Fighters and Advanced Aircraft, and this will be my 4th year in the pay pool process for LCMC and logistics, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Owens.
Hi, Scott Owens. I am the Deputy PEO for C-Cubed INN at Hanscom. I also wear another hat. I'm the PM organizational senior functional. And as far as ACDEMO goes, I've had considerable experience. I will chair the HN sub-pay pool and then participate in Mr. Marr's pay pool. And looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you very much. And did I miss anybody? No? Okay, great. Then we're all here. So today we're going to be talking about sustainable and non-sustainable compensation. That's the topic du jour, so to speak. So let's get started with what is the basis for assessing employee contributions just at large? We'll start at the high level, and we'll start with Mr. Leingang.
Yeah, really it all begins with that employee self-evaluation. So, I would really want to emphasize to everyone to really take the time, not just when it comes to the evaluation cycle, but throughout the entire year. Employees should really keep track of all of the great things that they're doing. Maybe that's just little notes to remind themselves in a notebook, or maybe it's a Word document that they keep and try to actually write well during the year. Either way, those self-evaluations are so critical because, of course, that forms the basis of the supervisor's evaluation to a large degree. And then when that sub-pay pool comes together, what that sub-pay pool has at their disposal is that self-evaluation and the supervisor's evaluation. And that's what they're going on. And so they're looking to try to understand the impact of those contributions. They're looking to try to understand if those contributions were enduring, something that is going to have a long-term impact maybe on the Air Force, or sustainable, and that it's going to be an increased level of activity or responsibility for that employee for many years to come. Or maybe if it was a one-time project, right? Mm-hmm. So all of those things need to be clearly captured in that self-evaluation, and clearly captured in the supervisor's assessment, because that's what that sub-pay pool needs to make those determinations.
Thank you. Mr. Lyman.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with everything Mr. Langdane just said. It is critical we start with the employee self-assessment is obviously foundational. But once you get into the pay pool process, the things the pay pools can start looking at as they assess those contributions and what you wrote up is the broadband factors we have in that demo. It's your job achievement and innovation, communication and teamwork, and mission support. That's the basis of how we assess contribution, and that's what we're looking at. And the factor descriptors, it's what's expected of the employee, your strategic vision, your level of engagement. There's discriminators such as level of contribution, leadership complexity. One of the things that ACDemo does really well, and I would strongly encourage everybody, is to go out to the ACDemo website, SharePoint site, and download actually the broadband factors and discriminators and review that. Those are key things we're looking at on the sub-pay pool that we're feeding up to the pay pools. And we really walk through there and say, here's the foundation of what the ACDemo process is looking to achieve in our workforce and how we're assessing our contributions to the overall mission. So my recommendation to everybody is to go in there and understand that better, because that is really what the sub-pay pools are looking at once they receive that information.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Owens.
Yes, I think it's actually having a very good understanding of those factor descriptors. So I just piggyback off those two comments. And I think that comes through communication. And that's a lot of communication on the part of the supervisor, and then also the employee communicating back with the supervisor. And so I think if that communication is lacking, you won't be able to have a successful self-assessment. So again, it's just a lot of communication to have a good broad understanding of those factor descriptors, because that is the basis. And that's how the positions are classified as well.
Okay, thank you. So let's get into this, to the next question then. We're talking about sustainable contributions. I've often heard the term enduring contributions. So let's get an explanation, or maybe some examples of what sustainable contributions are. And we'll start with Ms. Spangler.
Yes, thank you. A sustainable contribution is something that that you're going to continue on. It's not a one-shot thing that's over in a finite period of time. Something like a new piece of a new program coming into your into your organization that that you will be standing up, and you will actually be adding on to your workload. So, and that is going to be enduring cycle after cycle. That would be something that we would consider a sustainable contribution.
Okay. Ms. Pieri.
Yes. So for me, the word enduring is what's important when you talk about sustaining contributions. Those sustaining contributions are enduring tasks where the employee must maintain a certain activity or level of work in the future. An example for me would be like, let's say you have an employee that you put on a tiger team. There's some kind of problem where the program's facing a particular technical challenge, or and they put some people on a tiger team to solve this issue. Well, being part of that tiger team, yes, it might require overtime, it might require extra energy, surge support, but that's a one-time kind of effort. That's a non-sustaining contribution, just being part of that tiger team effort. But let's then say this tiger team recommended a way forward, and the PEO decides to implement the way forward, which includes adjusting responsibilities going forward. It could be something like you were a scheduling lead, but now you're responsible for not only the schedule portion, but you're taking on risk management processes and maybe integrating earned value data to make an integrated assessment for the PEO to better decision support in the future. You are now expected to perform at a higher level and contribute more to the mission success based on what you're going to do going forward. So that kind of contribution is sustainable and enduring. That is the kind of contribution we want to adjust salary appropriately. And that might be something that requires a CRI adjustment. Whereas if you're just part of a tiger team, a surge activity, a one-time non-enduring project, that might be more appropriate for, let's say, a one-time cash award.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So let's talk about some real examples where we've seen this situation come along. Obviously, we don't want to use any names or any identifying information, but let's talk about some situations that you've seen where you've had to assess an employee who had a change, a sustainable contribution that was added to their package during the year. We'll start with Mr. Owens.
Yeah, sure. And just to piggyback a little bit, because sometimes it can be a little tricky, I like to think of two aspects when I think about sustainable versus non-sustainable, or surge is a common word. And that's the idea of the scope of your position, and sometimes capacity is another way of thinking about that. So each of us has a role and a level of expertise on the teams that we support. So from an enduring perspective, we can be expected or will be called upon to wield that expertise or that role in whatever circumstances occur. Some examples of sustainable, I think someone mentioned perhaps your directorate has been given a new responsibility. In the Air Force, rarely do we have enough people and resources to meet all the commitments we have as an Air Force. So occasionally new work will be assigned to your team. And that's usually an enduring thing when a project finds a home. So that's one of the more common examples of a sustainable contribution, is when your PMO or your squadron, wherever you live in LCMC, gets assigned new scope. I would add an example of where that capacity is not enduring, and this happens all the time, right? One of your coworkers deploys, and the rest of the team has to pick up the slack. That deployment won't last forever. So that would be an example of a capacity surge that's temporary. It's not part of your UMD to have that person gone.
I see. Good. That is a great example. Thank you. Ms. McCarthy.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add a little bit from the HR perspective, because, what we do is a little bit different. We're not really working on a program and doing the same type of work that, your FM and your contracting and your PMs are doing. So for me, as a DP ACT demo person, an example of a sustainable contribution might be, you know, I year round am recruiting for the financial management directorate and filling their vacancies. So I have an impact on those divisions, but in a different way. But it's still something that is a consistent contribution that every year I'm kind of building on with my self-assessment, adding, you know, more vacancies that I'm filling or different ways that we're filling them. For example, this year with COVID, we had to change pretty much our whole process. So, you know, just something that's consistent, but also something that you could possibly exceed the prior year's goals or maybe change your processes a little bit so that you might end up increasing your level of expected contribution for the next year.
That's great, thank you. Because, you know, we do have a range of specialties or skills, professions within LCMC, and so not everybody is exactly the same. We'll go to Mr. Leingang.
Yeah, I just wanted to add too, you know, this year we're rolling out for the first time our career path models. And I think that plays into this discussion as well. So, you know, ideally within each functional area, an employee should be able to look at their career path model and see an increasing level of responsibility as you take a look at career progression within that functional community. So that's meaningful when you're talking about this idea of sustaining contributions, I think, because certainly increased level of responsibility has a lot to do with sustainable contributions. If you're you know, moving from one level of responsibility to the next, by definition, you're carrying a heavier workload. You're probably managing a larger team. The scope of your work has probably broadened, and all of those things are going to go into that enduring or sustainable type of category when it comes to evaluating the contributions. So that increased level of responsibility is really key as well.
So it kind of follows by default. I mean, we've been identifying or defining what sustainable contributions are. You can kind of infer from that what non-sustainable contributions are. But let's go ahead and spend a little bit of time talking about some of the examples of non-sustaining contributions as well. We'll go to Ms. Owens.
Yeah, I was just going to say before I talk about the non-sustainable that the conversation we're having, it does go back to communication. Again, I have to loop it back in that it's very important for supervisors and employees alike to understand, well, what are they both? Because you could have a very bad misrepresentation on the pay pool or very poor expectations going in, which could lead to some very bad outcomes, unintended outcomes. But I would say for non-sustainable, those are those one-time things which you wouldn't expect to be recurring, and sort of what Jen was giving a very good example of that she continues to do a certain assigned duty, and she that's part of her contributions all throughout each cycle. And so a good example might be if there's an IG inspection for whatever position it might be, and again, across the different career paths. And so that is just a one-time assigned task, and someone may do that task very, very well, and there may be an excellent outcome, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to sustain that and take that over into the next cycle. So in that instance, you might look at some other ways to compensate them through maybe a cash award or time off award just to reward them.
Thank you. Ms. Carlson.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody else is saying. Usually when it's unsustainable, it's a special project that being in logistics, we have product support managers, and home office will have a special project or a process that needs to be delved into. And so then they are not only doing their regular job within their division, but they also have to assist home office in defining process. Usually they're a lead of some sort, And then once that project concludes, then they go back to doing their normal responsibilities within their division. So that to me is, hey, great job. Usually, depending upon where they are in the ACT demo, you can get rewards, as someone else had mentioned, or you know, sometimes I even find that just telling them you did a great job. But those are things that in ACT demo you can acknowledge for that year because it was outside the bounds of their roles and responsibilities that they had originally signed up for.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Owens.
Yeah, I would be remiss coming from C-cubed INN. You know, a bunch of folks in our directorate are living through, you know, this situation in a pandemic. One of our portfolio responsibilities that General Schmidt has is to help us communicate and collaborate with, generally speaking, IT. So we've all got the T-shirt. Being on this very forum, you know, is an example where some teams have had to surge and come up with things that none of us, you know, predicted would be there. So we're all, you know, living, you know, that example now in some cases. A lot of our teams are helping the nation respond to COVID-19, taking on special acquisition projects and doing the contracting for other agencies. You know, those duties are not expected to be there, hopefully, for very long anyway, on a recurring basis. So, you know, we would have to acknowledge some of that stuff in this topic of hopefully what is non-recurring and non-sustainable.
And let me add that every one of us who uses VPN on a daily basis certainly appreciates the work that your team has put into making that process much better. We'll go next to Ms. Spangler.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of the communication piece to the employee. With my experience background in civilian personnel, you know, and seeing a lot of grievances kind of come throughout the years, a lot of it does boil down to communication. And, you know, especially when, you know, you're talking about sustainable and non-sustainable, and, you know, having the first level supervisors really having that communication with their employees of what that means, and, you know, acknowledging that, yes, some of these contributions, which are amazing and heavily, you know, benefiting the mission, although not sustainable, they still are recognized. Maybe not recognized by virtue of a CRI, but they are still very important and very, very much recognized in, as Ms. Owen said, you know, in cash awards or things of that nature. But I just kind of wanted to footstep the communication up front really does lessen issues that we may have on the back end of the process.
Yeah. And so talking about recognition during the pay pool process, how can that vary depending on whether the contributions are sustainable or non-sustainable? Let's go to Ms. Spangler again.
Well, they can vary. If they're, you know, if they're non-sustainable, the contribution could be recognized through the cash award. We also have the time off awards that are now available through the ACT demo process, which is a very nice benefit. We can do out of cycle honorary and monetary awards for individuals if they're appropriate for some of these contributions that they're doing that are not sustainable. So there are several ways that an individual can be recognized. You know, in addition to that, outside, you know, most of the functionals have functional awards, things like that, quarterly awards. There are many ways that we can recognize individuals that can really show how much, you know, those contributions meant to our mission and to our organizations.
Thank you. Mr. Lyman.
Yeah, I would just like to agree with what the folks are saying. It's important we differentiate what are those unique efforts during the year that are going to warrant you the cash reward of the vice the pay increase. And it's all about the communication and expectation management. But it's important for the supervisors out there to ensure we're recognizing our folks throughout the year. And just as we ask the employees to keep track of what we're doing, we need to make sure the supervisors know what our team is doing as well too, so we can recognize them at the appropriate time through the appropriate measures. And I do believe it's something that's sometimes a little difficult for folks, but we are rating you on the given performance period on your level of responsibility. And so the cash reward and the CRI are just two important tools we use to differentiate and recognize folks for their contributions.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Owens?
Yeah, I was going to add that it's important to get that right, because as we know, that expected contribution score, that's a forward, that salary, that permanent salary increase is forward looking. So if you don't properly recognize surge, your expectations got increased. And we don't want to set people up for failure when we've gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves in terms of that expected contribution score, particularly if we've improperly recognized that, hey, what earned you your recognition last year, if it wasn't sustainable, and then you've got this expectation that may be difficult to meet. So again, communication is key there.
Thank you. Ms. McCarthy.
I actually don't really have much more to add. I completely agree that going a different route, recognizing the non-sustainable is probably better than doing something like a CRI, because that does have a permanent impact if it does increase your expected contribution score. And like Mr. Owen said, you could ultimately be setting up the person for failure if you're increasing their expected contribution based on contributions that might not be sustainable in future years. So, I think the supervisors as well as our pay pool just need to understand when they're, doing their deliberations to recognize that. So we're ultimately not penalizing an employee and making it impossible for them to reach a future expected contribution score based on something that's not consistent.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Pieri.
Yes, I just wanted to foot stomp. I think these are all excellent points we're making and distinguishing between sustainable and non-sustainable, and what should result in a salary adjustment and what should be recognized in some other format. I want to just point out and kind of bring it full circle back to that career path models. So we don't want to set people up that they can't maintain that level of contribution if it's non-sustainable and they're not in a position with that kind of scope and complexity. So we don't want to set them up for a future year with an expected contribution score that, given their job they're in, they're not going to be able to achieve. But something that those non-sustaining contributions do, and getting on those tiger teams or participating in that surge activity, if that employee is looking for additional responsibility and to climb that career path, those are great experiences and things to talk about in an interview process. And they might be able to take on more responsibilities, moving from a section chief to a branch chief to a deputy division chief. And that's how you climb that ladder and get into positions where you are expected to contribute at a higher level, and then that should end up resulting in a higher salary through CRI adjustments.
Mm-hmm. And so we'll include in as well that it's not just during the pay pool process that you can reward these contributions or these non-sustaining contributions. Is that correct? I mean, we've got other tools available, and we'll go to Ms. Owens.
Oh, yes, that's correct. And I was just going to say, to comment on what Ms. Pieri said, it's an exciting time right now. And I say that because, as Mr. Owens mentioned, different things are happening with IT, and we're all functioning in a different type of world and using new communication tools. And I think it's a time where we should be looking at the contribution plans and determining what now is sustainable and not sustainable. So it's almost sort of a great way to reset and to have those conversations, because again, we are in this new world and there may be some things now that will be sustainable. But going into the next topic though, yes, for some things, those maybe surge activities, I'll just pick out. You could anytime throughout the year, if someone does something that is exceptional and it's not part of their sustained contribution, by all means, supervisors can definitely look at cash awards, time off awards, the normal awards programs that you can reach out and just pull from at any time throughout the year. And that's a wonderful thing to do. Great motivators for employees, and always should be recognizing their work.
Thank you. Mr. Langang.
Yeah, I think all great points, really. And I would just go back to those increased levels of responsibility. I think that's so key, and the empowering aspect of where we've taken ACDEMO here with the career path models. You know, that now employees really should have a clear vision of what that increased level of responsibility looks like within their area, and that's empowering, and I think should maybe clarify some of this for folks as we move forward.
Thank you. Ms. McCarthy.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Ms. Owens was talking about. I think another way to recognize the employee's contributions, if it is something like a non-sustainable, is through, you know, nominations for quarterly and annual awards. I think we kind of talked about it a little bit, but sometimes, you know, just being nominated and having your supervisor and your leadership recognize that you are having an impact, whether you get a CRI or a CA or whatever, it's just being nominated makes you feel that, you know, people are noticing what you're doing and that you are actually making an impact. So I think it is really important that supervisors and leaders you know, do submit those nomination packages. We have so many different types of awards, whether it's quarterly, annual, we have, you know, different awards within the different functional groups. So I think that's really important as well.
Great, thank you. And I think it's important, several people have mentioned throughout this, the course of this podcast, that communication with the employees between the supervisors, so that the supervisors help educate the employees better about how these different compensations can impact them, is really important as well. Let's go with Mrs. Spangler.
Yes, thank you. I do agree very much that the communication is absolutely key, as well as just recognizing the employees and using whatever platforms we have available to do that. You know, it is the ACDEMO cycle is not about the end of the cycle or the pay pool. It is about the complete, you know, the complete year. You know, you know, to kind of reiterate what Mr. Langang said, that, you know, the progressions that are out there, the level of understanding that the employees have with this now that we are in a no-tier environment, I think that is key also to understanding where your level of contributions can go within your broadband and within your position. Whether it is, you know, a one-time thing that, you know, it can be recognized anytime within the cycle, or if it's something that is going to maintain and be enduring and you know, help you get to that next level within your career. I believe it's all very important for the employee to understand and be educated on, and you know, and to be recognized for what their contributions are through the year.
Thank you. So we're just about to the end of our time, but so if anybody's got any last items that they would like to add, let's go ahead and talk about those, or maybe some points that you'd like to emphasize. We'll start with Ms. Carlson.
I'd like to stress to supervisors that even though the day-to-day activities consume a lot of their time, the most important thing they have is people. And so they need to learn to take the time out to pull their people aside to say, hey, good work. I love what you did. Continue to do what you do. There is nothing into generating one of those notable achievement awards. We've made it very simple in the logistics functional area. Just do some bullets. It doesn't take much out of your time to recognize those people who are the backbone to what who support you.
Thank you. Mr. Leingang.
Yeah, I really want to echo that. You know, I think a lot of studies have shown that employee satisfaction is oftentimes very much rooted in the relationship that they have with their first level supervisor. And so much is required of our first level supervisors. They're really on that front line of executing programs, executing efforts, while at the same time ensuring that the employees are properly recognized and tasked. And so there's a really big responsibility there that our first level supervisors have. And I just want to really encourage our first level supervisors to build those relationships with their teams and recognize that oftentimes a sincere thank you goes a really long way. When employees understand and know that management sees what they do, appreciates what they do, understands what they do, that's accurately captured in a supervisory assessment, and that the sub pay pool and the pay pool are recognizing that as well. But it all just begins with that relationship that the employees have with their supervisors, kind of on that front line. And so as we kind of roll now into the period of time where our supervisors are going to be doing those assessments, I just want to ask everyone to make sure that you're taking whatever time is needed to do those to the best of your ability. It's something that you should study and take appropriate care with, because that's where it really all begins, and that's where our employees really feel that appreciation, and whether that ultimately turns into a time off award or a cash award or an annual increase, the recognition there and the relationship with the employee is, I think, what it's all about.
Thanks, and I think that's a great point to end this discussion on today. I really appreciate everybody's time this morning. Thanks very much, and look to seeing you again soon.